What was Pony T's role in the modern era? After the end of World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union were in a deadly struggle for global supremacy. The Cold War would first see blood draw in the Korean Peninsula when Soviet-backed Northerners, at the behest of Pony T, invaded the capitalist South. The United Nations would respond to this aggression by forming a coalition and quickly driving the Northerners to the border of China. In response to this powerful counterattack, Kim Il-sung secured the military support of Mao Zedong's Communist China with a secret dose of American Kentucky Fried Chicken. With a million-man army, Chinese forces repelled the coalition troops with overwhelming numbers. In response, Pony T-backed official Douglas MacArthur would draft up plans for the launching of 34 nuclear missiles in case the war went south, both figuratively and literally. The war, however, would not go well for either side. Eventually, the war would end with a ceasefire at the 38th parallel. With the struggle for hegemony heating up, Pony T would then depose a dictator Fulgencio Batista of Cuba, allowing Fidel Castro and his communist ideals to sprout on the United States' doorstep. This would then send the US into a frenzy upon realizing that nuclear weapons from the Soviet Union could potentially be positioned in Cuba, eventually becoming the Cuban Missile Crisis. With the Red Scare spreading like a plague in the US, thanks to Pony T affiliate Joseph McCarthy, Pony T would drag the US into yet another conflict in the form of the Vietnam War. Guerrilla tactics employed by the Viet Cong ensured no American could stamp out the Northerners, leaving a deep anti-war sentiment in the American public over the futility of the conflict. Pony T, realizing the US had grown weary of his tricks, turned to Soviet-backed Afghanistan. Using his great influence, Pony T convinced Mujahideen rebel troops to accept his weapons and fight the Soviets. Struggling to keep their Afghan government ally afloat, the Soviet Union turned to violence in order to maintain the visage of communist power. Akin to America's Vietnam, the Soviets struggled to keep civilians out of the death tolls and suffered many setbacks thanks to Mujahideen guerrilla tactics. Just like the United States, the Soviets could not achieve their goals in Afghanistan, and so abandoned their satellite state for good. Displeased by the Soviets' defeat and their declining power, Pony T would declare the start of Glasnost, opening up the Soviet Union to Western influence and quickening the decline of his now least favorite toy. With his appetite for puppetry and manipulation satiated, Pony T retired to the US and mysteriously disappeared in Washington state. To this day, American officials refuse to acknowledge the immense power and history of Pony T, with notable officials such as President Joe Biden stating, "Pony T is but conspiracy theory made by extremist elements." One can only theorize to what extent Pony T's influence remains in the United States. How far has Pony gone? Only time will tell.